Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders. We're great to have. It's great to have Daniel Lee here, the general manager of NCS. Daniel, welcome.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Great. Great. So I'd love to just start with your own background. Were you always into music growing up? Was EDM your favorite thing to listen to? How did your passion for music start?
It originally started with I was actually in a band. I used to play drums in a band,
Hmm.
and my dad bought in an electric drum kit, and I eventually started doing some like drum covers online, like Avril Lavigne or whatever. I did like a drum cover, put it on YouTube, and then I learned with an electric drum kit you could like switch the kick for an 808 or whatever, and
Hmm.
put that into Cubase. So then I started recording my drums on Cubase and like different software. Eventually, that turned into me making music, and I wanted to be the next David Guetta or whatever it was at the time when I was probably like 13 or 14 or something. Um, yeah, and then sort of quite quickly, I sort of started making music, putting it up on YouTube, um, and eventually I got a distribution deal, which back then it wasn't quite as easy as it is nowadays. Nowadays you can go to TuneCore or CD Baby or whatever and kind of get a distribution deal. It wasn't that easy back then, and I somehow managed to get in touch with the right person. So I started putting my music up onto Spotify, iTunes, although I'm not sure whether Spotify was live then. Can't remember.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I just started putting my music out, wanted to be an artist. And what ended up happening is artists came to me and were asking me, like, how did you put your music on iTunes?
Huh.
Um, because it just wasn't as wildly
Right.
widely available. Um, and then I just sort of said, you know what, I'll do it for you. I'll upload them for you.
Hmm.
Um, and then it turned out that I added like 20 tracks that I'd sort of distributed for people, and then all of a
Wow.
sudden it sort of just clicked. I was like, oh, I'm a record label now, um, which was a funny switch. And then that's when I went down the path of wanting to study music business, etc. And that was
Mhm.
kind of the start of it, really.
Right. So it just kind of happened essentially really naturally. It was just this you were in the space already, you had a skill that people needed, and then it really evolved into something else, just helping all these other people out put their music out there too. It's
Yeah,
definitely yeah.
it was pretty much just kind of winging it and kind of I wasn't really fully aware of what labels were at the time. It just sort of
Mhm.
naturally happened. Um, then when I started learning more about the industry and kind of connecting with people, um, I became interested in artist management. Um,
Mhm.
and I ended up reaching out to a bunch of different artists, one of which was a guy called Ellis, who now is released on kind of Monster Cat and NCS and working with Zed, etc. And yeah, we worked with each other for a few years, and it was sort of just a natural wing it experience.
Yeah.
And then to kind of shift you to where it kind of then went to NCS was basically I was doing my artist management and my own label at the time called Bearskin.
Mhm.
Um, and I reached out to a bunch of different labels to submit my artist music to.
Right.
Um, and I was at an event called Dance Fair in the Netherlands.
Okay.
Um, and Future House Music, a music brand, was there, and I really wanted to release some music with them. Ended up managing to chat to the owners and give them my demo. Um, they really wanted to sign the track,
Hmm.
and at the
Okay.
same time, I sent it to Billy, who was the founder of NCS.
Mhm.
Um, and one day, Billy goes, "I really want to sign that track," and that kind of then started this introduction to
Wow.
NCS,
Yeah.
which kind of changed my career. Really, it just everything kind of um, changed from there. So yeah,
Yeah, and it was just, I mean, that seems to be kind of like you right place, right time, essentially. Like you were just trying a bunch of different options, and then this happened to
yeah,
really work out. Yeah.
yeah. I think I'm extremely lucky for like kind of
Hmm.
right place, right time. And I think I've been really fortunate with the opportunities I've been given. But I do sort of realize that actually, you have to position yourself to be lucky. You have to position
Yeah.
yourself to connect with the right people. It's all about people at the end of the day.
Hmm.
I mean, I've just been stalking your Instagram, and it just seems you're super well connected, and that's
It's people.
people provide
Yeah.
opportunities.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, basically, Billy really wanted to sign the track, and I had said to him, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I'm probably going to sign it to Future House Music. They've already accepted it."
Uh-huh.
Anyway, we went and met for uh, a, a Nando's basically, which is
Mm.
a food chain in the UK, and he was explaining to me how busy he was running NCS as the YouTube at the time. I think it was 5 or 6 million subscribers, huge
Yeah.
channel all by himself. And as soon as he said that, my gut reaction was like, "What can I do? How can I help?"
Right.
Um, and effectively, he kind of pretty much offered me a job on the spot, and I was kind of employee number one at that point. Came on as the label manager. Um, yeah, and then things have kind of really sort of snowballed from there, really.
Podcast is brought to you guys by Gately Group Insurance. They have just so many different categories of insurance from home to auto, health, and life. And they're all located right over here, Boca Raton, Florida. And they're really just great people. Brian's amazing. So definitely reach out to them, 561-770-7070 or info@gateleygroup.com. So he was essentially managing this 5-6 million subscriber YouTube channel by himself, just putting out people's songs, and that was just one person behind it. And then what was your role once you got involved? Like what did you help him with?
Yeah, NCS originally started as a promo channel, so effectively just uploading other people's music, not necessarily music that we owned. Um, and the premise of NCS is, it's called No Copyright Sounds. Basically, we allow content creators to use our music for free on YouTube and Twitch. And Billy would find music that was copyright free and upload it to promote it. Um,
Huh.
and then right around the time that I joined, he was shifting it to become a record label. So everything he promoted was stuff that we owned because we could then guarantee that it was copyright free.
Yeah.
Um, so I came on board then to run the label. So in terms of bringing music in, packaging that up into a product. So with artwork, marketing campaign, etc., distribution, and then all the way to sort of putting it out, uploading it to YouTube and whatnot. Um, yeah, and that was kind of my sort of main core role for a good few years, and then since then we've expanded the team, and I've kind of become much more responsible in terms of hiring and expanding the team in terms of the expanding the vision, where we're going as a company, not only just with NCS, we also have a sister brand now called Arcade.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, my role has kind of now evolved into more managing the whole day-to-day operations of the company as opposed to just sort of uh, providing support on the label back then.
Yeah. And where do you like how do you determine who's an artist for NCS, or what's a song that you guys want to put out? Like how do you figure out that this is something that we think is going to do well, or this is somebody we want to sign to the label?
Uh, I guess number one is uh, if we really enjoy the track, and it's really kind of hard to explain that one. It's
Yeah.
just like we're in the studio, so we do a weekly A&R session with a bunch of us. Um, it just it's generally like got great melody, really good energy, um, and is catchy and memorable. I think the kind of next element is, nowadays we look at an artist profile, we'll
Mm.
stalk their Instagram. We want to see what they're posting, how passionate are they really about their career? Are
Yeah.
they going to join us on this pursuit to promote this track, or are they just expecting us to come along and promote it? How passionate are they? Whereas back in the day, we would just, we would release a track as long as it was just a good track. Whereas nowadays, I think it really needs to be a collaboration.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's a difficult one to say, really.
Right. So if an artist like doesn't have much of a social presence in the beginning, but they have a good song, because that's something
Yeah.
still worthwhile for you to look at, even yeah, because you can do something with it. But how like and a social presence for an artist, like that's incredibly important now, right? Just having that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's more just, um, I think we can work with artists that don't have a social presence, and we do most of
Yeah.
the time, to be honest. Um, but I would say we can tell when an artist is passionate just based on the email that they've written up or the way that they've communicated with us or
Hmm.
maybe even just the images they might have on their SoundCloud demo. You can just see sort of the effort that might have gone into it. I still get demos every day where it's just a link and it'll just say, "This is my demo," and that's it. To me, that just shows that um, you're not as passionate about music as we are.
Hmm.
Um, Otherwise, I think you'd put the full effort in. So that's really important to us.
Yeah, I actually have a friend he's been an up and coming artist, Shia Mazel. So
Let's
we
try,
actually
yeah.
yeah, we spent a year together abroad, and
Oh, wicked.
he had like 15, 20,000 or so on Instagram, and he was like, I gotta raise my social profile. So he started just posting all the time, producing the highest quality videos he could. And then eventually I think he got a deal with you guys and put out of his first song, and it really started to blow up for him. So he saw like once he raised his social profile and put that kind of quality into put quality into content, that was just a huge difference for him.
Yeah, he's been killing it recently. Like his socials numbers are insane. It's
Yeah.
just he's just been sort of building this profile, and his music's amazing as well. So yeah, I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, definitely agreed. I'm happy he's with you guys. So, you guys you definitely have done a lot in terms of shifting the music landscape and what a lot of traditional labels do now because of what you guys have achieved. Do you think that a lot of these other labels will go towards the no copyright, like ability for their songs to be out there and other people to use them? I mean, that's given you guys so much more popularity because of the ease of spreading your music out there.
100%. I think back in the day, I say back in the day, probably 7 years ago, music was perceived by the traditional industry as something that we want to keep to ourselves. And oh, if you're a creator, well, yeah, you've got to pay me if you want to use my music. And we flipped that on its head. We were like, well, we'll just give it away for free because we knew the benefits that would
Hmm.
trickle back. So it used to be creators would have to pay a label somehow. Then it was, oh, well, maybe this is mutually beneficial. So you can use it for free, we'll give it away for free. That's kind of a mutual benefit. But what I think it's going to is labels are now having to pay creators to use the music because of the sheer marketing it provides. Um, so yeah, I think it's going to be a combination of labels giving access to music, whether that's through like music libraries like TikTok or YouTube's Creator Music, etc., or even labels paying creators as they're doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's gonna keep changing because it's the accessibility to music's becoming more and more out there, and if you have this clear competitive advantage with scalability because of the no copyright, so
Yeah.
it's probably gonna keep changing. Thank you to Apollo Mediation Group, JB, for sponsoring the podcast. They're a full service trust and probate administration firm helping advocate for those who are over the age of 65 throughout all of the state of Florida. So if you're in Florida and you're in that age range or you know somebody in that age range, definitely reach out to JB at 561 289 9495. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like the relationship with Alan Walker, how did that start? Like, how did you guys had a single together that did really well, and then I think that changed he signed a different label, then he came back. Like, how did that begin, and where is it currently?
Yeah, so Alan originally worked with Billy back in, I'm going to say 2014, something like that, maybe a little bit earlier. But Billy was looking for a genre called Norwegian House.
Hmm.
He ended up chatting to Alan, who sent over 3 tracks, Fade, Spectre, and Force.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and we we released the tracks. Fade particularly started to blow up. Um, and went on and did a few 100 million views and streams, etc. Was used in every other YouTube video, and then a vocal version was created called Faded, um, which was then released through Sony, which became a global hit, which was huge for Alan and us. It was kind of gave us a ton of exposure. Um, then there's been reworks of Spectre called The Spectre, etc. Um, and yeah, and then ultimately it had been quite a few years since those tracks had come out. Um, and this year, well, early last year, late last year, we reached back up to Alan and said, look, we'd love to we'd love to work on something again. You know, we'd love to bring it back to the roots and kind of work on something. So um, yeah, we decided to put a single out together. It's done very well. We were super happy with that. It's been a really cool campaign as well. The
Mhm.
fans have really enjoyed seeing him back.
Yeah, I think a lot of people definitely like having him back, and it feels like always been a part of the NCS community.
Yeah,
Early on, like what were you guys looking at? Like you said that this Norwegian genre, but why did you specifically pick Alan? Like what were some of the things that stood out?
I think he had a very unique sound.
Uh-huh.
He was kind of really pioneering that sound, and I think it was quite clear that even early on, those tracks were hits. You know, the melody in them were just super memorable,
Uh-huh.
even without a vocal. Uh, I think those were kind of the really sort of key points. And then even just sort of him as a brand, you know, then evolving into having the hood and the mask. Um, it was so clear that he was going to become a pop star.
Mhm. Is there like a specific, like if you look at many of these different songs, Daniel, that have been hits, right? Are there specific things that are constant within all these different songs that are like, okay, well this makes sense. This has been in a lot of our songs, and this is the reason why there's a hit here. Are there things that stand out like that?
It's funny, we're actually doing some kind of research at the moment, getting some all the sorts of metadata and trying to build, you know, what is a hit for NCS.
Yeah.
But the key elements have generally been super catchy melody and something that's easy listening, something that like you'd be comfortable with your mom listening to. You know, it's got to be something that's not it doesn't fall within a niche sound. Um, and I think it's accessible to everyone. For example, we had a track called Cradles by Suburban,
Mhm.
um, and I remember being sent the demo on Facebook a few years ago, and we went in the studio, listened to it, and we all collectively knew we were like, this is a huge track, um, and I think it was just ultimately because it was so catchy. I think that's the key point. But I won't pretend that we can predict a hit because we can't. You know, there's some tracks that have gone on to do really, really well that we wouldn't have thought of done, and vice versa. Some tracks that we signed and we're like, this is an absolute hit, and it doesn't do that. So
Yeah. Well, I think coming up with some sort of like metric where you can kind of analyze songs and then helps you predict new ones that could be hits would make a lot of sense. Um,
yeah,
yeah.
maybe AI. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the next discussion.
There could be something there. So in terms of like the typical artist deal, how does that generally work, like in the beginning, and how does it evolve over time?
Yeah. So we have always generally worked on single base deals.
Mhm.
So we do a 50-50 deal with the artist. So 50-50 split of revenue. Um, and we pay our artists monthly.
Mhm.
So it's you know it's a nice sort of stable income. Um, but in terms of over time, I would say really when we start to work with artists on a more ongoing basis, and we really understand who they are, we will then maybe do an EP or an album deal.
Mhm.
Um, for example, we work with a group of artists called Unknown Brain, and
Mhm.
we worked with them to sort of A&R a bunch of different tracks and a marketing campaign that went out across, you know, say 6 months. Um, and that's kind of much more of a hands-on approach as opposed to the sort of single deal. I think we're definitely leaning more towards now working with artists on multi-track deals as opposed to one-offs because I think the fan community that we have wants to constantly be we want to see the same artists and kind of be reintroduced and then sprinkle in new artists every so often. Um, yeah, I don't know whether that answers your question.
Yeah, well, I think Daniel, you guys have had a nice balance of some the artists that have been consistent, and then some new ones as well, and people like that, like this discovery aspect. Do you see that? Do you think that there are significant competitive advantages that traditional labels have that NCS doesn't have that you guys would like to go and expand into? And like, what would those be?
Yeah, so I would say that we've always been in the realm of EDM, which I'm not a fan of the word EDM, but electronic music
Okay.
effectively. Um, and I think uh, the typical sort of marketing output for that has been, very much digital marketing, social media creators, etc. Whereas what we're looking to move more into now is commercial music,
Mm.
because we recognize that creators, not only do they want some electronic music, they also want to use a track that sounds a bit like Ariana Grande. So that's where we can come in and go, all right, well, we've got these tracks that they give you a sort of similar vibe. It's got a commercial element to it. Um, and I guess the limitations with that is um, the more commercial sound needs commercial marketing, radio, press, etc. And these are sort of things that we've been learning over the past few years and
Mhm.
shifting towards that. But I would say that that's where kind of a traditional, especially like a major label, they have that network already set up. Um,
Yeah.
but I think it's an opportunity for us rather than a hurdle.
Yeah, I think it can make a lot of sense for you guys to maintain the core business and even grow that. And then also even there could be a potential to partner with an existing label and like work on this together with them because they have that infrastructure. But there's so many artists that you guys have now and probably a lot that you could discover that could be on radio, that can be out there like and much in this more mainstream like pop genre that haven't had that. And you guys have been pretty good at discovering new artists when some of these other labels they kind of wait till they hit a certain point of success. It's a high point, and then they'll go and sign them. But it's like they've already proven themselves. You know,
Yeah.
this podcast is sponsored by Diamonds by Eyal, who has 5 generations in the diamond industry through his family. Just incredible ability to get really great watches, engagement rings, wedding bands, and even does appraisals and so many other things. Give Eyal a reach out to him at 561-999-8878 or Eyal at diamondsbyeyal.com. He has some of the best stuff out. Yeah.
100%. And I think you're right about partnering with labels. It's something that we want to do more of. So we did, so we've done stuff with Sony, Warner. Um, we've done a collaboration with Future House Music.
Mhm.
Um, and when it makes sense, I think we'd love to do some more stuff, especially with the majors. I think it then just it becomes complex in terms of deals and whatnot because
Mm.
us being copyright free and traditionally a major, um, they want to collect money everywhere. Whereas we're saying, well, this part we don't collect on because we make money over here. So
Huh.
it's a great opportunity.
Yeah. Why do you think the cartoon On and On song became like the biggest song from NCS in terms of like playing plays on NCS YouTube? Like, do you think there's anything specific about it? Was it the campaign behind it or anything like that?
I feel like we've looked at this, and I think really it's a great song. It's just,
Yeah.
um, I think it's the melody, it's the vocals, but I do think ultimately what will have happened is, you know, a larger creator will have used it in their intro 200 times, which will have then encouraged other people to use it. And I think it's sort of just naturally down to the business model and it being a great track. Um, but yeah, that one's done crazy numbers and sort of continuing to rise. We even did a Spanish version. We've rinsed it a little bit. I feel like every year we try and do an alternative version of it. But um, yeah, I think it's just a great song.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of potential to take like some of the existing songs that you have, and almost like re-release them on like radio and other places. Like we saw this song by Miguel, 10 years ago he released it and then it became a number one because of TikTok. Like there's just a lot of potential to take some of the old catalog and bring it out. I think that could be something that'd be interesting for you guys to do.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and it's something we've explored a few times. We had a track called "Fearless" by Lost Sky. We then did a vocal version of it. Um, More recently, we had a track called "JPB High," um, which was just used in so many different YouTube videos as like their intro or outro or whatever. And then we got a vocal version, and that's yeah, it's killing it right now in Spotify's algorithm. So. Um, yeah, it's really interesting whether we kind of focus on, you know, catalog music or more like frontline or just a combination, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. So the deleted NCS account that has some of these songs that have
Oh
been
yeah.
taken down, etc. Do you guys know who's behind that, or are you guys behind that?
No, we're not the ones behind it. No, I think there's a few different people. I think I could probably guess a few of them. They're probably in our Discord. Um, but no, don't know who's behind them. But to be honest, they're doing a great job tracking it all. I do find it very funny how the kind of fan community will spot the most minutest of things. It'll be like, oh, the circle has changed a little bit, or like they changed the title on this video, and it'll be an old video from 5 years ago that we changed yesterday, and somehow they spot it. So, no, I really appreciate the community kind of doing these channels and
Yeah,
reviewing things and whatnot.
agreed. So just a couple more questions, I would say. One of which is, so the circle, the visualizer, where did the idea come up for that? I mean, it's essentially the logo of NCS as of this point. Like, how did that, and has it also enhanced the music experience with it tracks the song essentially? Has that helped?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a core part of the brand, and it was actually something that the original visualizer was completely different. It was almost like a sort of face, which you'll see on some of the old uploads that we've got. Um, but it was actually something that Billy found a company. There was a YouTube channel called Rusted Media that had this visualizer, pretty much exactly the same to ours. And he reached out and actually bought it off him.
Huh.
Um, so I think all credit to Rusted Media, really, that's kind of where it originated from.
Mhm.
Um, and since then, I think we've rinsed it so much that it's become the NCS circle. Um, but no, I think it looks great, and we've been trying to evolve it over time. Um, but yeah, it's sort of very important symbol for NCS.
Yeah, agreed. How has the label changed? I mean, just also the YouTube channel as well. How has it changed since the beginning when you got involved to 30 million, plus subscribers, 10 billion plus views? Has the management changed? Has it really just been growing in terms of what you guys can do in the music business? But what have been the biggest changes? Yeah.
Great question. Biggest changes, I would say, scale of team. So now we're about 7 core members of staff plus, a handful, probably ending up around 20, including sort of freelancers just dotted here and there. But in the London office, we're about 7 core members of staff. Um, that's a fairly big change. And then I would also say the sort of style of music.
Mhm.
Um, if you listen to NCS in 2014, 2015, would predominantly be kind of instrumental music, whereas now 99% of the music we have is vocal music, something that's going to stream well on Spotify.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I would say change of music, and then also just quite possibly the launch of Arcade. So we've got a second label that we're treating as a sister label called Arcade that we're developing over time. That's a more like darker tone, kind of a yeah, much more of like a darker sound, as opposed to NCS, which is quite like high energy, bright.
Yeah.
Um, so that's been cool. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Daniel, you guys have a really great company and product you guys have built out with NCS. You guys have helped so many different artists become more
appreciate that.
mainstream and giving them those opportunities. So I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, sharing the NCS
Yeah, of
story.
course.
And I look forward to what you guys are going to do next.
Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Okay.